Welcome back to the show, all about American cuisine as part of our 250th birthday, big birthday party of America here in 2026. I am Rick K. Jones, and this is United Taste of America from iHeart Podcast, where we tell you about the most iconic food dishes from each of our 50 states. Today's about the land of Lincoln. It's about Illinois, and it's Illinois is really a diverse state. In fact, Illinois is really a rural state in Chicago. And so the culinary influences are so different between the two areas of the state of Illinois. Again, Illinois was one of those Indian Territory regions that was originally explored by the French, part of French Canada at one time until what? The French and Indians War. And then it became U.S. territory in 1783 and became our 21st state in the Union in 1818. Again, as I mentioned, it's really two states, farming in the South and industry in the North. And so it's about shipping on the Great Lakes, and about shipping from both the railroads that came to Chicago in a big way at one point, and about the shipping lanes and the shipping industry on the Great Lakes coming out of Chicago. And so it became a hub. Chicago became a hub for goods and services from all over the Midwest that would come to a central point and then be distributed out in other ways. You know, it's called the land of Lincoln because that's where Abraham Lincoln grew up, but he wasn't born in Illinois. He was born in Kentucky, but he spent much of his life and career in Illinois. During the Civil War, Illinois sent almost 250,000 soldiers to fight, one of the states that sent a lot of people as part of that. Chicago today is arguably our third biggest state. It's might lose that soon to Houston. There's kind of a little rivalry going on between those. But Chicago really drove the state of Illinois in so many ways. Lots of industries. It really started out as a big meatpacking center. Again, let's go back to the railroads. They put cows, pigs on railroad cars. They all came to Chicago, and there was huge meatpacking plants in Chicago. The meatpacking district was so big. And some of the names, Oscar Mayer and Vienna Beef, and some of these things still exist in Chicago today. Chicago has been traditionally a huge advertising hub. Everybody talks about Madison Avenue in New York, and clearly New York drove a lot of the advertising in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, right on up to today. But Chicago had some great ad agencies led by the great Leo Burnett. And Leo Burnett really, as an advertising agency, kind of had their pulse on what we would call the common man. And one of the things that Leo Burnett is famous for were all of the cartoon characters that they developed for so many brands, like cereal brands like Tony the Tiger and Toucan in Fruit Loops, and Jolly Green Giant, and just so many others. In fact, Leo Burnett probably had more cartoons developed for advertisers than any other ad agency. Chicago also was such a hub for what we call the Great Migration. So many blacks in the South that were being so persecuted, and there were so few jobs. And, as we got into the Depression, prices plummeted. And so you might be growing crops as a sharecropper, and you're just not getting money for your crops. So many migrated to the North. They got on trains and they headed north to work in the industries, in the meatpacking industry. Or we talked, about Detroit and how they came there to work in the auto industry. But clearly Chicago became a hub for blacks, and the South side of Chicago is very African American, and so many great African American political leaders, musical leaders, actors, actresses, and others came from that part of Chicago. And we'll talk a little bit about the cuisine of Chicago and how that has influenced it. Chicago was also very famous for bootlegging. It was a hooch town, largely led by a gangster named Al Capone, who kind of dominated the illegal liquor trade during Prohibition periods. Ultimately, Al Capone was not convicted of selling hooch. He was convicted of not paying his income taxes. And so I guess you're selling illegal hooch. You can't declare that as income. And that ultimately cost him, which is kind of a great, great, great story. Who's the only president that was born in Illinois? Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, born in Illinois, again, not known for being from Illinois, is he? He's known for being from California. But he was born and raised in Illinois before he migrated to California to find fame and fortune in the motion picture industry. Now, both Ulysses S. Grant and Barack Obama are presidents known for being from Illinois, but again, neither one of those was born in the state of Illinois, but they spent most of their adult lives and their political careers in Illinois. There have been so many major American companies that were founded and headquartered in Illinois. Let's think about the great retailer Sears. Sears was, a dominant retailer for decades, based in Chicago. Walgreens, the big drug company, headquartered in Illinois. Two major insurance companies, State Farm and Allstate, are both based in Illinois. And then the farm equipment manufacturing company, John Deere, is based there. And there are a couple other companies you've heard of. How about Kraft, with Kraft cheeses and later meats and stuff, and United Airlines. A lot of people don't realize this. United Airlines was originally the passenger airline created by a manufacturer called Boeing. Boeing was making planes and decided they needed a commercially viable passenger division of Boeing, and that became United Airlines. Okay, like so many other states, the culinary traditions of Illinois really reflect those various ethnic groups who settled there, and it's really a state with what I call fusion, a lot of fusion of cuisine and cultures that led to some uniquely American dishes. The foods of southern Illinois, the rural part of Illinois, are so much like the other Midwestern states. Things like, again, pork tenderloin sandwiches, fried chicken, vegetable casseroles, lots of homemade pies. That region of Illinois is known for cinnamon rolls, lots and lots of wonderful cinnamon rolls. They also are known for the famous horseshoe sandwich. The horseshoe is an open-faced sandwich with a hamburger patty topped with French fries and topped with cheese, all melted. Really, really a good dish from that part of it. Rockford, Illinois is famous for Mrs. Fisher's potato chips, which is a unique brand of potato chips manufactured there. And in Bloomington, Illinois, they make beer nuts. Beer nuts, classic bar food where you come in and have beer nuts with a cold, frosty beverage. But then there's Chicago. And Chicago has a cuisine all of its own. Again, as I said before, it is the third largest city in America, and there are some amazing foods that have come out of Chicago. Here are a few. A lot of people don't realize this. There's an enormous Mexican-American population in the greater Chicago area. Why? They came to work in the meatpacking plants, and they came in just like the African-Americans migrated north during the Great Migration. Mexicans came to Illinois, into Chicago primarily. And so some of the best Mexican food in America is in Chicago, and it's not what we would refer to as Tex-Mex, because these people came from all regions of Mexico and came up. Now, there's a Caucasian, a white chef by the name of Rick Bayless, who is a great chef. He has spent decades traveling throughout Mexico, and then has brought so many of those great dishes back to Chicago at a series of restaurants that he has. And so you start with go to Chicago and eat amazing Mexican food from all over the great country of Mexico and all the regions. They're famous for their own style of pizza. Chicago-style pizza is a deep dish pizza. It's a different kind of pizza. It's not anything like New York pizza or Detroit pizza. It is big, thick crust, a lot of cheese, a lot of fillings. Really, you eat it with a knife and fork because it's not a pizza that you pick up because it'll just bend and be messy and all this kind of stuff. But deep dish pizza is very, very famous in Chicago. They're also famous because of the Italians that settled there for a dish called an Italian beef sandwich. An Italian beef sandwich, it's kind of like when we talked about cheesesteaks in Philadelphia. It's kind of like that in that it is thin cut beef, usually ribeye, but they keep the juice. So what you do is like an au jus that is poured over it, and then they have a gardenere with it, hot peppers, onions, in some cases mushrooms. There's a place called Al's Italian Beef #1 downtown Chicago that you just belly up to the bar and you get it. And of course you have to eat it like this so it doesn't drip all over you, and you eat it and it's just like ridiculously good. It's a big popcorn town. The Midwest is a big popcorn. When we talked about Indiana before, we talked about all the great popcorn manufacturers. The one in Chicago is Garrett's Popcorn. You can find it all over, including at O'Hare Airport or Midway Airport. Regular popcorn, caramel popcorn, cheese popcorn, just amazing product. Brownies, great American dish. They were invented in Chicago at the Palmer House Hotel. Who knew? Well, you know now. So brownies came from Chicago. They're also famous for their rainbow ice cream cone in Chicago. 5 different flavors layered on one cone. It's called a rainbow. It's got all kinds of great flavors and taste and all that. And then because of the African migration, Chicago is an amazing soul food town. Great ribs, great greens, all kinds of what you would consider to be Southern food you found on the south side of Chicago. And it's a great meat town, meat and potatoes town. There's German influences there with a lot of great German food. And then there's great steak places like Gina Giorgetti's and all kinds of places in that area. But if you had to pick one dish in Chicago or one dish in Illinois, it's the hot dog. And again, why? Because it was the meat packing center of America. They probably made more hot dogs in Chicago than any other place, maybe more there than the rest of the places combined. Hot dogs and the various sausages came from the trimmings of the beef. So you would cut beef and pork, and then whatever was left over is what would ultimately be chopped up and put into the casings that made the hot dog. Everybody's always like, it's always the remnants of the meat. The remnants of the meat are just fine. Trust me, they're really, really good. And probably the best hot dog in Chicago comes from a company called the Vienna Beef Company. They were founded in 1893, first served by Emil Reichel and Sam Ladney at the Columbian Exposition. Okay, so they started this business, and serendipitously, there's this giant global exposition in Chicago. They showed up there and began selling hot dogs. The Vienna Beef makes cold cuts, Italian beef, Polish sausage, but what they're really known for is their classic all-beef hot dog. And so the classic Chicago hot dog is made with an all-beef Vienna dog. It's got to be served on a soft, steamed poppy seed bun, and then it's topped with yellow mustard, chopped white onions, these bright green sweet pickle relish, a full dill pickle spear, slices of tomatoes, And then the unique part of this dish are these Mexican sport peppers, tiny little green peppers that are on it, hot dog that give it this heat and this crunch and all this stuff. Put a little celery salt on top. You have the classic Chicago hot dog. Now, you can get them all over. I mean, there's, dozens of unbelievable hot dog stands and hot dog restaurants in Chicago. But some of the best, if not the best, are found at one place called Portillo's. Portillo's is such a great story. 1963, Portillo, 1963, I think he'd come out of the service, okay? You come out of the service, you're looking for a job, and he opened a hot dog stand that was known as the Dog House. And this was in a little suburb. It was on North Avenue in Villa Park. And he invests $1,100. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of money today, but in 1963, $1,100 was a lot. What did he buy? He bought a 6x12 foot trailer. But here's the problem. The trailer didn't have a bathroom, and it didn't have any running water. Now, you got to cook the hot dogs. You got to cook them in water. You're going to boil them. He ran a garden hose from the building next to where he put his hot dog stand. And that's how he got into the business. The necessity is always the mother of invention, isn't it? And in this case, he was able to get the water that he needed with a 250-foot garden hose from a nearby building that came to his trailer. But by 1967, he's a pretty big success. And the Dog House is ready for a new look. And he names it after himself. He names it Portillo's, and he moves to a new building that actually had running water in it. In 1983, they opened their first drive-through in Dover's Grove, Illinois, and they became known for speedy drive-through service. We talk about fast food. I laugh all the time. Whatever happened to fast food? It's not fast anymore. In fact, it's very, very slow. One of the reasons you would go eat fast food was because why? It was fast, but you don't see that much anymore. In 1985, he was featured in Forbes magazine as the up-and-comer of the year in American business for leading Portillo's to success throughout what we would call the greater Chicagoland area. And then he opened, again, he's largely in the burbs. But so many people in Chicago work downtown. They take the L, they come into downtown and they work. And he didn't have a downtown location until 94. He opens what is probably the most famous Portillo's in the world. It's at the intersection of Clark and Ontario Streets downtown. This is the place. It's full of sports memorabilia. It's 2 stories. It's got a soundtrack. They play the great American soundtrack, great rock and roll music there. They serve some great food. He actually purchased some bleacher seating from the original Chicago Stadium where the Blackhawks played and won the Stanley Cup in 1938. He's got their banner in there. He's got all kinds of, like I said, Chicago sports memorabilia. And that year in 94, he was named the Entrepreneur of the Year by Inc. magazine. Today, they're a huge success story. They have 50 locations in multiple states. Dick Portillo from a trailer without running water to the great American success story. Y'all, and this is what American cuisine really is about. It's about these individuals or these groups that created just great businesses that have employed so many people. Portillo's, Chicago Dogs, one of the great commercial successes in all of it. All right, so where else should one go eat in Illinois? Well, that's a big state, isn't it? I'm going to kind of leave it to today to just Chicago, because I've spent a lot of time in Chicago. Years ago, I actually had an office in Chicago. We worked, we had a number of clients in the Midwest, the biggest one being the great retailer Sears. We managed a lot of their sponsorship activities, and we had a lot of other clients in the greater Chicago Midwest area, and we had first in office in a place called Greektown. I love the fact Chicago really is a big city with manners because it's a big city with all these little neighborhoods. It's a Polish neighborhood here, an Italian neighborhood here, an African-American neighborhood here. In this case, it was a Greek neighborhood, Greektown, where we had our office. And then later we moved very close to the Portillo's location down on Ontario Street in a great place. So I've spent a lot of time there, eating a lot of great food. Where do you start in a city as large as Chicago? Well, here are today's three from me, my selections. Number one, there's an amazing seafood restaurant on Hubbard Street downtown called Shaw's Crab House. Shaw's Crab House. They fly in seafood literally from all over the world, and it's just one of the great seafood houses. I really learned my craft of being in the sponsorship industry. In fact, I could say everything I learned about corporate sponsorship, I learned in Chicago at the annual IEG conference. That stood for International Events Group. Lisa Yugman, her brother John, her sister Lauren, they created this powerhouse sponsorship conference. And I was fortunate to go there nearly 30 years annually, and I was fortunate enough to speak there for years. I learned so much from the Yugmans. I learned so much from the guest speakers and the people that were there. It was always a great town. And, you would come in on Sunday and they would have a wonderful kind of a buffet dinner. On Monday night, we would go to the Four Seasons. We always stayed at the Chicago Hilton and Towers, had the conference there, but we would go to the Four Seasons on Monday night and have another great dinner. But Tuesday night, you were free. Go out on your own. And every Tuesday, I would take a group and I would take them to Shaw's. And we would go to the bar. There's a bar area at there, play jazz music, get oysters, get a bunch of great food, sit in a place and visit and have a great time. Again, they have great food. It comes from all over the country, but what I like is what I call the local, and that's lake fish perch. I love the little small fillets of perch that are fried, pan-fried, what you would call a classic Midwestern Friday night fish fry. You can get that there at Shaw's Crab House. Y'all, trust me, I've eaten at great seafood restaurants literally all over the world. This is as good as any. Maybe the best. Great chowders, great oysters, great fish, fresh fish, 12 different fresh fishes cooked a million different ways. Shaw's Crab House. You gotta go there. Secondly, steaks. I mentioned earlier, Gina and Giorgetti's. Old school Italian. It's a classic Tuscan steakhouse, started in 1941. This is what I love about Gina and Giorgetti's is you get the combination of unbelievable steaks with unbelievable Italian food. And you get both at the same time. Great Italian wines. I mean, a great wine cellar, with wines that go with the beef so well. It's just one of those old school steakhouses. Got manners. Great place to do business. Great place to have a romantic dinner. It's just got it all, the great Gene Giorgetti's in Chicago. And then here's a place that a lot of people don't know about that I really love in Chicago. It's called Carson's. Carson's is another, meat place, but what they're really known for are their pork chops. You get these unbelievably heirloom pigs, okay? Today, processed pork, unfortunately, they've taken a lot of the flavor out of the pork. I live on Wadmalaw Island in a neighborhood with a pig farmer. And Tank has a farm, and he grows nothing but heirloom pigs that he sells to the great barbecue restaurants literally all over the East Coast because they have flavor, different kind of flavor. Carson's pork chops have flavor, and it is so good. Again, when you go to Carson's, don't even bother looking at the menu. Just say, I want the grilled pork chop, and you can't go wrong. Boys, Chicago and Illinois, of course, it has a great musical playlist, and today is no exception. The first song is the classic Frank Sinatra song, Chicago, My Kind of Town. Great classic song. The band Chicago came from where? Chicago, one of the great rock bands of all time. And I've included today one of my favorite Chicago songs, one of their earlier songs called Make Me Smile. And then Chicago, because of the black influence, is a great blues town. Great blues town. So many great blues artists were born in Mississippi or born in Louisiana or born in Alabama, but came as children or young adults to Chicago and recorded in Chicago. Muddy Waters, Chess Records had Howlin' Wolf had Chess Records was based in Chicago. So many great blues artists recorded there. There's a wonderful song, in this case by a British blues artist, Eric Clapton, called Sweet Home Chicago. It's a great, great song. You may know the San Francisco band Creedence Clearwater Revival. They have a wonderful song called Looking Out My Back Door that starts with just got back from Illinois. Locked the front door, oh boy. Got to sit down, take a rest on the porch. Great song. And then one of my favorite singers today is a woman named Jennifer Hudson. You may know her. She was on American Idol. Great artist. Appeared in the movie Dreamgirls, which was really a story of Diana Ross and the Supremes. And she has this amazing song called And I'm Telling You I'm Not Going. One of the great classic songs done by a great artist from Chicago, the great Jennifer Hudson. So that's Chicago, folks, today. Chicago hot dogs and a cold beer. There's probably nothing better. It's mighty tasty. We're going to see you back here next week on United Taste of America from state number 22. That state is the great state of Alabama. We'll see you then.